Ready to strengthen your reading comprehension? Take a listen.
Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on what it really takes to win a civil case. And we're calling this one Before the Gavel, winning a civil case in the prep room. Because as we're about to see, the real action, the stuff that truly decides who wins and who loses, well, it happens long before a judge even walks into the courtroom.
So, let's just jump right in with a big question. When you think of a dramatic trial, what pops into your head? You know, is it a lawyer's brilliant closing argument? A surprise witness who blows the case wide open? What do you think really wins a court case?
Well, the answer might actually surprise you. The truth is, the most critical moments, they're not the scenes you see in the movies. The real victory is almost always locked in before anyone ever sets foot in that courtroom, all through careful, painstaking, and super strategic preparation.
And that brings us to our first big idea. The real trial begins. And the concept here is simple, but honestly, it's incredibly powerful. The battle is almost always won long before the first witness is ever called to the stand.
And to make this all feel real, we're going to follow a pretty straightforward and relatable case all the way through. A pedestrian gets hit by a car while they're crossing the street. This is going to help us see exactly how all these strategies actually play out.
So where does this whole pretrial battle even begin? Well, a lot of the time, it starts with something that sounds like it's straight out of Hollywood. Rehearsing for the jury. This is how lawyers try to predict the great unknown. What are 12 total strangers gonna think?
Now, lawyers have two main tools to do this. First up, you've got the focus group. Think of this like a laser pointer. It's a small, targeted group you use to test out very specific arguments or themes. Then you have the mock trial, and that's the floodlight. It's a full-blown dress rehearsal with a much bigger group, simulating the entire trial. It's a huge investment of time and money, but it gives an absolutely priceless preview of what's to come.
But who are these mock jurors? I mean, you can't just grab anyone off the street. There is a super strict screening process. You're looking for people with absolutely no connection to the case, to the lawyers, or even to the legal world at all. The entire goal is to create a true blank slate so you can get the most honest, unfiltered reaction to your case's strengths and its weaknesses.
Now, there's another tool out there called a community survey, but here's a really key strategic point for you. Community surveys are very costly and may not yield the most useful information in most cases. So what does that tell you? It means lawyers are constantly doing a cost-benefit analysis, figuring out where to spend their clients' money to get the absolute biggest bang for their buck.
Okay, so once they've tested out their arguments, the next major phase is assembling the evidence. This is where you build the factual foundation, brick by brick, that's going to support your entire story in court.
And this slide, using our pedestrian case, just perfectly shows the tug-of-war over evidence. So the plaintiff has an eyewitness, plus they were wearing bright clothing. But wait, the defendant has their own eyewitness, and they claim the sun was in their eyes. And check out that third row, no skid marks. The plaintiff's lawyer says that proves the driver wasn't paying attention, but the defense lawyer uses the exact same fact to argue the pedestrian jumped out so fast there was no time to react. It's a perfect example of how two sides can build completely different stories from the very same set of facts.
A huge part of the evidence game is expert witnesses, and picking the right one is an absolutely critical process. First, you have to dig into their past testimony. Have they ever contradicted themselves? Second, you need to make sure the expert you hire is the one actually doing the work, not just a figurehead for a bunch of junior associates. And finally, you get every single detail down in writing. No surprises, no misunderstandings.
And here's another fantastic insider tip when it comes to evidence. Err on the side of a greater number of exhibits rather than fewer. You know why? You just never know what single thing is going to click with a juror. And, just as important, make sure that the exhibits are large enough for the jury to see. I mean, it sounds so obvious, right? But a killer piece of evidence is totally useless if the jury has to squint to see it from the box.
Okay, so the arguments have been rehearsed. The evidence has been gathered. Now it is time to set the final rules of engagement. This is all about defining the exact battlefield where the trial will be fought.
And the one document that does all this is called the pretrial order. And this quote from the legal code says everything you need to know. The pretrial order supersedes all previous pleadings. What that really means is that everything that came before, all the initial complaints, the motions, it's basically ancient history now.
This one document becomes the new official blueprint for the entire case. As you can see here, there's only one. It is the single, final word that locks everything into place. After this, no more major changes.
And what exactly does it lock in? Well, pretty much everything.
The final definitive list of witnesses, the final list of exhibits, every single claim of negligence, all the types of damages you're asking for, even the facts that both sides actually agree on. From this moment on, there are no more surprise witnesses, no pulling evidence out of a hat. The entire game board is set.
But here's the real strategic genius of this document. It's not just a bunch of paperwork. This is the last chance for a lawyer to take a hard look at their case, trim the fat, and get rid of any weaker arguments. It forces them to focus the jury's attention only on their strongest, most winnable points.
Which brings us right into the home stretch, the final countdown. These are the last absolutely crucial steps that happen in the final days and weeks right before the trial is set to begin. You might think the judge is just a neutral referee, but smart lawyers know you have to scout the judge. They find out all the little preferences. Does this judge like paper documents, or do they prefer everything on an iPad? Do they let jurors ask questions? How do they like exhibits to be handled? Look, this seems like small stuff, but knowing it helps the trial run smoothly, and more importantly, it keeps the lawyer on the judge's good side.
Next up is a huge battle that happens behind the scenes over something called jury instructions. You should think of these as the official rulebook that the judge reads to the jury right before they go off to make their decision. Both sides submit their own versions, and they fight tooth and nail over every single word, every phrase, because the language the judge uses can totally shape how the jury sees the case.
Lawyers also have to game plan for jury selection itself, and this is where something called peremptory challenges comes into play. Just think of these as a lawyer's veto power. For a typical 12-person jury, each side gets 6 strikes to remove a potential juror. No reason needed. For a smaller, 6-person jury, they each get 3. It's an incredibly important tool for shaping that final group. But does the size of the jury really make a difference? Oh, you bet it does. Here's a fascinating bit of strategy. A 12-person jury is often way better for the defendant. And why is that? Because the plaintiff is the one who has to prove their case. And it's just plain harder to convince 12 people of something than it is to convince 6. A simple numbers game can change the whole dynamic of a trial.
So, when you put it all together, the jury rehearsals, the evidence gathering, setting the rules in the pretrial order, all that final prep, you start to realize something. The verdict isn't just some spontaneous reaction to what happens in court. No, it's the final piece of a structure that has been carefully, painstakingly built over months and sometimes even years.
Which really just leaves us with one last question to think about. The next time you're watching a courtroom drama, are you going to be thinking about the trial you see on screen, or are you going to be thinking about the trial before the trial? The one where the case was probably already won or lost?